And now, it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Like, if you do ever... I did the long-distance relationship thing for a year.
Uh-huh.
And having your girlfriend at the time in San Diego, a pretty good way to do it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, if you... I got to visit a spot a bunch in a year. San Diego's pretty good.
Okay. Well, I'm going in early August, so excited to learn it a little bit. I've been before. I've been a couple times, but never really enjoyed it.
I'm not...
Meaning I enjoyed it, I just didn't take advantage of it.
I am not necessarily Southern California guy, but that does not mean that there are not nice spots. And San Diego's got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
You should go to the racetrack.
Okay. Take the children.
I used to go... I take my kids to the racetrack. Was that a judgy statement?
Yes.
Really? That we go to the Downs every summer? I did that as a kid.
Yeah, I've never gone. I should go.
Oh, it's crazy fun.
Yeah.
And you know what? Kids get into it because they pick their numbers or whatever and I'm rooting for number 5 or whatever it is. You know, you read the names to them. Like, I like that one.
Yeah. Make them use their own money, though.
You know what would be a good horse name? Tampa White Sox fan.
Tampa White Sox.
That would be a good one. You're wearing your White Sox hat today.
I am,
That's
actually, in honor of the late Steve Klauke.
Which I'm glad you are. And that is where Ben, you and I heard the news before our show ended, but we were not in any position to confirm and report, so we did not. Scotty, who did such, did that in his show, obviously early in his show. And this may sound weird, but I'm really happy that it did not come out during our show.
Okay. And
I got a chance to consume all afternoon the way the station handled it. You know, we lost a member of the family, you know. And I thought it was just incredibly appropriate and heartfelt, all the things. And so now that we're a day removed from it, I thought, you know, how nice it will be for you and I, where maybe we can do a little bit more of a positive approach or tribute as opposed to being, I mean, I think everybody was so sad yesterday, and not that we're not sad
of course
today, but, you know, with time comes perspective, and Steve was pretty amazing. So yesterday would have been a really hard day to do a radio show. And I've done a radio show on really hard days before. Yesterday would have been right up there.
I'm one of the rare people in this business in Utah who never produced a Bees game.
Believe it or not, I never did either.
Which really random. I mean, Christian, you produced Bees games, right? I mean, you produced lots of Bees games.
Yeah, I did a season and a half with Steve, including his final season. So that was really special. Seeing what all of the other kind of minor league teams did for him as part of his retirement tour. So that was really special, and I'm super, super thankful and happy I was able to be part of that with Steve.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
But by being around, I mean, I started in this in 2011. You've been doing this since the early 20-aughts. You just can't. You were going to run into Steve. I mean, Steve used to go to every Jazz game and was actually for a long time kind of the backup in case something were to happen and somebody wasn't able to show up to do the broadcast. Steve was going to be ready to go and jump on the mic if he had to. And I don't think I ever saw him actually have to do it, but he had that ability. But he was at every game. So if you went down and ate the media meal before, Steve was sitting at the table and just the number of games he was at, inevitably you were going to cross paths with him. We certainly talked to him on this show quite a few times. I've interviewed him a bunch of times, getting ready for Bees seasons, etc. So that was my relationship with him. I have to admit, I just never got to know him all that intimately well because I didn't cover the Bees and our paths didn't cross a ton.
I never produced a Bees game, and this will lead me into something that I really loved about Steve. But so Steve, and you heard Randy Rigby talk about this yesterday. Steve was right there with Locke and others at the the great Chris Tunis at the birth of sports talk radio in this market. Mm-hmm. And Steve was a great sports radio host and play-by-play guy, but those kind of coincided, right? And then he got the Buzz job, which eventually would be, his legacy, right? But he did afternoon sports talk radio for a long time. When I got into the market, though, he was making his transition from sports talk radio guy and play-by-play guy to play-by-play guy and then other. And you mentioned him being at all the Jazz games. I don't know how many people know that he used to write the remember, it wasn't the program that you would buy, but it was a pamphlet that came with just not basic, but because it was a few pages long, but info about all the players and the bios on the front office people and all the things. He used to write all of those for a while. He had various hats eventually behind the scenes at the Bees where he was doing various, marketing and all this sort of thing. He was a radio guy at heart, which is one of the things I loved about him because I am a radio guy at heart. He understood how to paint the picture with words, which is not something that I think a lot of people possess, or maybe they think they do, but it's a lot more difficult. He was a storyteller and an incredible broadcaster, and his legacy will be an amazing one just from his professional accomplishments alone. But I think the personal stuff is why people were so sad. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yesterday, including me. And I don't like gushing on social media about it. I know some people do, but I didn't. If anybody was wondering why I didn't respond or whatever, I just don't. I'm not comfortable with that in my personal life, gushing in that manner about it. But so why I haven't produced a Bees game? Sorry, Ben, and I'll give it back to you too if you have some thoughts. But why I didn't produce a Bees game is because when I started on the Zone, we did not have the Bees. And so as I was coming up through the producing ranks, I did not do what Christian did and produce Bees games. I produced other things. Tried NASCAR on a Sunday. Whew, it's great. It's terrific.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that. But I made my relationship with Steve immediately because I was this young, long-haired 20s. I loved hemp chokers. That was my thing. And I would go to these events and cover them for the station. I mean, I would cover so many different things. I was kind of trying to make myself useful in any way I possibly could. Even when I was an intern, I was doing this stuff. And immediately, Steve and Brad Rock were the two that gave me the time of day. Not that anybody else was rude, but outside of the Zone, like Hatch and Monson and Bowler and those guys I worked with every day, those were the guys that treated me as an adult, even though I probably didn't deserve it, and a colleague, even though I definitely didn't deserve it, and I liked him immediately. Even Ben, and I don't know, if people have stories, feel free to share them, but you were wearing your White Sox hat. Mm-hmm. I took this monster road trip with my buddies where we were going to a wedding in Ohio, and so we were traversing the country, and we were stopping in Chicago for 2 days. And I wanted to go to a White Sox game, so I called Steve because I knew that's where he came from. He's not only a fan, but he knew people. And so
he's an Illinois guy.
I said, listen, we'll pay for it, whatever. But I was wondering if you knew somebody that could lock us in on some decent seats. He's like, oh yeah, I gotcha. And so I paid for him or whatever, but I didn't even know what the seats were all about. He's like, just pick him up. We'll call. I was like, cool. So we roll in there, Ben. We had been camping this whole trip, so we smell. Everything's dirty. We're going to a baseball game, right? So I say, oh, okay, I'm picking up tickets for Jake Scott. I kid you not. A member of the dang front office.
Huh.
They say, hold on, Mr. Scott. Wait here for a second. Comes down, hands me these tickets, says, oh, I shoot the breeze with him about Steve for like 10 minutes while my friends are standing there. But you know what? They can wait. And thanked him and all the stuff, and he went back. Ben, I'm telling you what, 4th freaking row.
Amazing.
Behind home plate.
Amazing.
4th row behind home plate, right there. And, God, what an experience. You know what I mean?
Says a lot about Steve's care for people.
Right.
But also the way people cared about Steve. That he could make a call and somebody would take care of Steve's people because they care about Steve so much.
And again, at this point in my career, I had never worked with him. Never produced for him, never worked with him, whatever. I knew him from being around the scene, and, God, it's a loss.
Absolutely.
It's a loss. And in fact, we're going to hopefully mix in some sports and stuff, and we're going to have to because, like, anyway.
I admire the work he put in, I can't imagine. It's not a romantic life. It sounds more romantic than it is. That's a hard job.
Oh, brutal.
It's not.
By himself?
It's
all
not the
those
majors.
games?
He could have gone to the majors. It's not the majors.
And you're going to markets like El Paso for a while. I mean, but really like Reno.
Yeah.
Vegas was the highlight. Like, oh, great. I get Vegas, but it's the middle of the summer and it's 120 degrees outside.
Yep.
But at least it's not Sacramento.
I mean, it was.
But
the work is crazy. It's incomparable that he did that for 29 seasons and 30 years and made as many friends as he did, and the number of people whose lives he touched and considered him a friend is a testament in its own of what an impressive person he was. And very heartbroken, I think, most of all, for his family that sacrificed their dad, their husband, for 30 years, 29 years. I don't know Adam particularly well. We just see him at Jazz
Adam.
games.
I'm so brokenhearted
He's
for Adam.
He's the equipment manager for the Utah Jazz and is beloved over there.
And just to chip off the old block, as far as a human goes, Adam's the best.
So to lose a person who was getting to the point in his life finally where he could spend more time with them is really the tragedy here, other than losing Steve at such a young age. So,
Adam's a good kickball player.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's how you know him? Your guys' kickball years?
No, but I worked for the Jazz for 10 years.
Yeah, right.
And we had a Jazz kickball team for a couple of years
Right.
that he played. And, I was connected with Adam through Steve because I was buddies with Steve. So I was buddies with Adam back when he was just, he's the manager, locker room manager. Is that his official title? He's the guy, logistics behind.
He's integral.
How the magic happens.
He's
But he
integral to
came
everything that
up
happens.
he was originally a ball boy, but he's been promoted,
If you don't know Adam, you would recognize him if you've seen him, if you've watched Jazz games, because you're right, he's around. You just see him.
You should talk to him next time you talk to him. Talk to him about the bubble and what his job was all about to get the team through that whole experience. Pretty amazing.
I bet it's a nightmare. But anyways, sending our condolences to his family and everyone who knew him so well. And appreciate the opportunities I got to know him. Certainly not as well as other people.
And listen, from Christian, I'm glad you said something because in this business, sometimes how you treat your coworkers or your producers or those sorts of things, especially in a situation like the Bees, where you're going to have a lot of producers because one producer can't do a whole season usually, unless it's a superhuman, because there's just so many games, and it is a position to get your foot in the door. Because it's working nights, it's usually part-time and that sort of thing. And so he saw a lot, and he treated all of them, whether they were good or bad.
Yep.
But I knew when we had a bad producer for Steve, not because they would come to me with some horror story about how he yelled at him over the line or whatever, but he would call me.
Oh, okay.
And he would be really nice about it, and he would tell me what the producer needed to improve on, and then I could do my job and help the producer improve, though. But it was never one local host that will go unmentioned once said, "You'll never work in this town again."
That's something that Scotty touched on yesterday too. Like, it is tough being, he was in the industry for so long, and then all of the brand new producers get put on the Beast games. But Steve never ever complained about it, and it almost seemed like he genuinely enjoyed putting up with all of the new producers who don't know what they're doing. And we all made tons of mistakes, and he kind of just laughed at it and went along with it and was like, "Yeah, this is part of being new to this business."
But that's the thing; he wouldn't just put up with it. He would invest. He invested in people,
right?
Like that was a thing that he did. I wish I hope to become a big enough deal that I can say to somebody someday, "You'll never work in this town again." I don't know if
that person was a big enough deal to say that.
I actually know two, and let me just say, both producers ended up working in this town again.
They continue to work in the town. Well, we need them.
All right. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to play some fun moments, some calls, some of those sorts of things throughout the show, because we want to tribute our dear friend, of course. But glad we didn't have to do the show yesterday.
More enjoyable to remember him than to break that news.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yep.
All right. With that in mind, why don't we break here? We'll do top three.
Okay.
Coming up on the other side, where we'll dig in some stuff. But shout out to the Klauke family and
Steve himself.
Steve himself. We'll miss you. Stay tuned. More next. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day.
Let's go.
This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Thank you for making us part of your day. Armpits back to shirts, by the way. Just pointing that out. Time for the top 3 stories of the day. KSLSports.com, brought to you by J. Brooks Jewelers. 2 locations to serve you. One on Winchester Street across from Fashion Place Mall. The other at Traverse Mountain in Lehigh. Maybe he got a pass because they were outside. Okay. Maybe the mouse was like, all right, you can pit out, but only because you're at that, like, soccer thing.
Did you see all the drama that, there's an NBA... I know we got to get the top 3 stories. I'll be quick. And there's a beef.
Oh, this is number 1.
Between Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania.
Right.
Shams from The Athletic and Stadium used to be Woj's kind of number 2 guy.
At Yahoo.
Woj goes to ESPN. Shams stays behind at Yahoo initially before he gets hired by the New York Times, The Athletic. But now Shams has kept all of his connections through Woj, and that's why they have these competing, Woj bombs and whatever you want to call it, ShamWows or whatever you want to call it.
He has some other connections of his own.
So Shams yesterday goes on Armpit Show, which is on ESPN, which is Woj's network.
Correct.
To run down the report of Dan Hurley being offered this job with the Lakers because a week and a half ago, Shams had said J.J. Redick's going to take the job. And the next morning at like 4 a.m, which doesn't seem accidental because Shams is probably the one time he sleeps. He's notoriously a sicko. And he doesn't drive, so he can always be on his phone in case there's breaking news. He doesn't drive because he wants to be able to tweet from the back of a car. He lives at home, I think, with his parents still. It's weird. Woj tweets out at 4 a.m. in the morning that Danny Hurley is seriously considering taking the job, specifically after Shams tweets out about J.J. Redick. It's goofy. And then yesterday, Shams goes on Woj's network to talk about it. So beef is brewing.
He's gone on with Armpit a couple of times. That's not the first time.
And Woj won't go on with everybody.
No. Well, Woj now won't go on with Armpit because of all this. Yeah.
So anyways, stupid media beef. 101.
And by the way, Armpit likes to flex his independent muscle over the mouse, and so he'll have shams on. He doesn't want to be the car wash.
The conformist.
Because ESPN is the car wash. They call it the car wash, where they just put their people on every show over and over and over again. And then the coaches that go out there or whoever, they have the same people on all their shows, and he doesn't want to be that. So he takes shams.
By the way, if it's your first time listening, Armpit is Pat McAfee.
He's on in our studio every day. I've never heard a word of this show.
Correct, because we have to have it muted.
We have it muted. I don't listen to it in my personal life. I have no idea. It seems like, watching it every day, it does not seem like something I would enjoy.
It doesn't seem like your alley, no.
No, not at all.
But
you got Mullet Guy and AJ Hawk for some reason, and I don't know who those other buffoons are, but doesn't seem like my cup of tea. Although Ryan Smith loves him.
Ryan Smith goes on a lot. Well, he's the biggest name in sports media right now. So Ryan Smith having a direct line to be able to jump on is a very valuable thing.
He probably has the biggest audience. Yeah.
And Ryan Smith is really good at finding that. He cuts through the car wash aspect of it, and it's not going to go on with Mike Greenberg.
Well, yeah, marketing 101. Find the biggest audience. It's not,
and then go right to it.
And
Ryan's very good at that.
And Ryan's got. He's not Charles Barkley charisma, but he's got a little charisma.
You can put him on TV.
Yeah,
which is pretty rare for NBA owners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine Steve Ballmer and his sweaty armpits on TV.
And apparently
all the time.
completely unheard of with NHL owners. Like Ryan is going to be a firecracker in the NHL.
In a good way.
In a good way, yeah. Not Mark Cuban annoying.
No, but Mark Cuban ended up being a firecracker in a good way, actually, because everybody feared that he was going to be a firecracker in a bad way.
And he kind of was early, and he matured.
A little bit, but yeah. He ended up being, one of the faces of the league in a weird way.
Yep.
Think Shark Tank.
Laid the ground for modern NBA ownership.
It really did.
The young billionaire who's very involved.
Major League Baseball passed on him. They would not let him buy the Rangers because they thought he was too much of a loose cannon. And baseball is the ultimate stuffed shirt ownership group because the league has been around so long. And they said no. Like Frank McCourt was an owner at the time.
Yeah.
They were fine with Frank.
Right.
But somehow Mark Cuban, maybe it's the East Egg, West Egg thing. New money, old money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yeah,
English major.
No question.
All right. Well, good times.
Is that a Gatsby reference?
It was my best attempt at one.
I like it.
All right, we haven't even gotten to number one. Number one,
Basketball Hall of Famer Jerry West died this morning at age 86.
Mr. Clutch, the logo. Not that I have a ton to say about Jerry West. I will say this. The very last time I was starstruck, and it will probably happen again at some point in my life, was seeing Jerry West walk into Thomas and Mack.
For Summer League?
For Summer League.
Yeah.
And his stunningly silver hair, like white, silver. He's still very tall. He's just awesome and carried a huge presence. And it's one of the few places I've ever been where it seemed like the whole gym stopped. He walked in, everyone was like, oh, logo's here. Like it was, you could feel it. You could feel Jerry West had a presence in the NBA. And that was obviously past his playing career and still when he was a front office member and one of the greatest NBA executives of all time.
I think the greatest.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people could probably make some arguments, but I mean, I actually don't think there's a whole lot of argument that it is Jerry West. In fact, my take was going to be, Ben, I've told you this about Charles Barkley. He was a great basketball player. He was a Hall of Famer, great career. He's a way better broadcaster than he ever was a basketball player. And it's those two things, like those two skill sets aren't related, which makes it unique. Yes, he played the sport he's talking about, but there have been so many stiff ex-athletes that have played the sport they're talking about and are terrible broadcasters. Magic Johnson, for instance.
Yeah, right.
that are not good at it because the skills aren't related. So why so many former players struggle in the front office is because the skills are not really related. Yes, you played the sport you're running the business for, or you're running the team, but what makes a savvy general manager and what makes a great player are not necessarily related. And I think Jerry West was a far better front office member than he was a basketball player, and he was an amazing basketball player.
He made an all-star game all 14 of his years in the NBA, went to 9 finals as a player, won 1 ring as a player, won 8 as an exec. He's been involved in over 20% of the NBA finals ever. So more than 1 in every 5, Jerry West directly has his hands in.
And you know what? And Pat Riley's really good at it. And I don't think coaching and front office work are necessarily all that related either. And Pat Riley has turned into an incredible executive. He's still got a long way to go until he's better than Jerry West, in my opinion.
Yep.
I mean, the fact that he was involved in building the Warriors is amazing. I mean, not just the Lakers, but the Warriors, as you alluded to, all the titles. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Shifted away from kind of the last old school dynasty with Shaq and Kobe, meaning old school, meaning like traditional center,
Right.
big guy in the paint, to one of the most progressive teams of all time.
And
in the Lakers or in the Warriors.
And Bob Myers is convincing me more and more by the day that he might be a huge bozo. So Jerry West might have been more involved in that sort of thing than he gets credit.
Absolutely.
Because this Bob Myers victory tour on TV is, I could listen to him and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think it was this guy.
Yeah. Maybe it wasn't him.
Maybe it wasn't this guy. All right, what's next?
Number 2, the NBA Finals continue tonight with Game 3 in Dallas.
The big question tonight is the availability of Kristaps Porzingis. He has an injury I cannot pronounce. Apparently,
Yeah,
it's
it's some
not serious.
super rare thing, though,
The
right?
doctor who's like, I've only ever seen it once before, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, but
Seems like it's got to be a bigger deal
only
than
ever
that.
seen it once before. That's rarely a good sentence.
And I don't like seeing the word dislocated. Whatever it was, they're supposed to be located, not dislocated. Everything's supposed to be intact. So we will see if he plays. But they need him. I mean, they have. He's critical to their separation over the Dallas Mavericks, and I mean separation both on the court and off the court. Talent-wise, he creates separation. On the court, he allows them to space everything out.
You know, learning more about how players and franchises, for that matter, deal with and report injuries is a really fascinating thing to me. Because there's no, required way to do it, right? And so often it's used as manipulation. For example, Carlos Boozer had a hamstring strain.
Uh-huh.
Now, depending on how angry the fan base was about the injury would dictate what language they used when they reported it.
Sure.
Like if the fan base was really mad, they'd go really serious, and it would go from a hamstring strain, and I can't remember specifically what it was, but it was like mini tears. You know, the word tear made an appearance, and it's like the whole point was to say, back off, fan base. He's dealing with something here. He's got mini tears.
Something serious, yeah.
Yeah, because people hear the word strain, and they go, oh, yeah, I get a strain every time I get out of bed in the morning. What's this guy's problem?
Yeah.
And honestly, hamstrings, as we've come to know with Mike Conley and others, can be a really delicate, serious thing that often isn't given the, serious treatment that it probably deserves. And that wasn't different with Carlos Boozer. But the fan base, and this wasn't Carlos's fault entirely, because he came after Carl, who never missed games ever. And Carl was very fortunate that way. That wasn't Carlos Boozer, and the fan base would just get super mad, and you could tell how mad the fan base was based on the evolution of the language. So with Kristaps, I'm interested in being super specific about exactly what this is, and then super transparent with the doctor about what exactly they're setting up or trying to say. And again, even that's confusing because they're like, that's not very serious too. It's like, well, why are you treating it so seriously?
Yeah, why are you getting so specific with it? And I do think they wanted to separate the calf strain that he's been dealing with from this injury, which they say is completely unrelated, even though I think it's the same leg and it's the exact same area of your body.
Well, everything's related. See, that's another thing. My dear mother had knee problems.
Mm-hmm.
And has since gotten a replacement, which is working out for her, which is pretty cool. But that led to Achilles problems and foot problems and all this. It's all connected.
Right.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. It came from somewhere. It's all connected. There's all a reason for everything. So they're sending a message with that too by saying unrelated. part of me thinks that's defense that Kristaps wants to play, and if he blows his Achilles, they don't want to be held responsible.
Yes. We'll see if he plays.
Which is horrible when you think about it.
No, absolutely right.
But this is the dance they make. When players want to play and they say, I want to play, and the doctor's like, I don't know, you're kind of hurt. Because doctors now have to err on the overcautious side for a variety of actually really good reasons. And players still often want to play. Donovan Mitchell wanted to play. The trainer said, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea. And then that trainer was finding a new job. It's this delicate dance. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Kristaps. Sounds uber serious, like he could be, his career could end. And then in the same sentence, they're like, I don't know, it's unrelated.
It's not that serious.
Not
He's
really a big deal. So he's going to play.
I'm picking Dallas to win Game 3 regardless of the Kristaps injury. But look, you lose, the series is over. No one's ever come back from down 3-0, and I wouldn't expect this Mavericks team to be able to do it either.
All right, what's next?
Number 3, Rory McIlroy is not getting divorced.
Shout out to Rory.
They pulled the marriage out of the fire?
He and Erica, his wife Erica, have resolved their differences. The divorce has been called off. An attorney representing four-time major champion Rory McIlroy filed a motion Tuesday to voluntarily dismiss the divorce petition that was filed on the golfer's behalf in Florida, so he had filed. McIlroy told the Guardian of London on Tuesday that he had reconciled with his wife of 7 years. The case is closed.
Now, I am happy for them personally, but what do you bet me a prenup got torn up?
You think that's what it
Like,
was?
we can put this back together, but we're ripping up that prenup.
You think it was like a contract, a true
Yes,
contract negotiation?
100%.
You're so cold.
What do you bet me that happened? Yeah, I'll come back. I'll come back for sure. Love you. However, you need to shred that prenup, bro.
It's going to cost you.
You ever try to divorce?
Non-divorce is going to cost you.
You ever try to divorce me again, it's going to cost you.
No, it's really going to be ugly. Rory has not won a major title in 10 years. It's crazy. So hopefully this ends up being a great weekend for Rory.
I don't hear the shredder.
He gets not divorced and wins a major.
Have your attorney holler at me when it's done, and I'll pack my stuff and come back. I got the U-Haul ready. Give me the go-ahead.
Well,
you don't think so?
Oh,
you think it's
you
love?
know what? You're probably right. I hate to say it. You're probably right. You have found a way to identify the cold, hard truth about some of these issues in sports that I don't think of, because I'd like to think I still have warm blood pumping through my heart. But somehow you figured out all the coldest parts. Maybe it's because you're married to a lawyer and that's what their job is. But you always find the little gritty details of people's lives that are their account for their motivations, and that might be it. You might be right. It might totally be it.
Are you excited for the U.S. Open? I wore my Pinehurst shirt today. I'm going to wear another one tomorrow. That's a no. So you don't incorporate Father's Day and the U.S. Open together at all?
I don't. In the court filing in Palm Beach County on May 13th, 3 days before the first round of the PGA Championship at Valhalla Golf Club in Louisville, Kentucky, McIlroy's attorney, Thomas Sasser, wrote that the marriage was irretrievably broken.
Yeah.
McIlroy asked for shared parental custody of their 3-year-old daughter and for a judge to enforce a prenuptial agreement the couple signed on March 17th, 2017.
He did, didn't he?
Even the place where they put that, it's like the third to last sentence, which was like his agent or his lawyer was like, look, I'm going to give you the details of the story. You have to put in that there's a prenup in here. You've got to put it in the story, but don't make it the last sentence. I've written stories. I know how this works. Don't make it the last sentence because you don't want everyone to think that that's what it's about. So just kind of sprinkle it in there. You ever hang out with someone you're not supposed to be hanging out with? Like, let's say your wife hates one of your friends and like knows it's always a party, and you're like, yeah, James was there, Daryl was there, Greg was there, Kyle was there, and she's like, wait, did you say Greg was there? And you tried to bury it in the middle of the conversation? That's exactly what this.
No, what you're talking about is the American Graffiti bit. You see that movie?
Yeah.
When he goes in to buy the booze? Uh-huh. And he's trying to underage buy liquor.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll take some bubble gum and some of those baseball cards and a bottle of Old Harper and give me one of those magazines and this and that. And it's like so funny. The Simpsons did a bit on it.
Simpsons did. One of the funniest things they've
One
ever
of
done.
the funniest bits about it. Yeah, but that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, they don't get along. They're going to share the kid because everybody loves the kid. Going to enforce that prenup. And what came after it?
At the time.
And she gets the house. Okay.
It talks about when they met after. So.
Yeah, and it was love. Now it's not. And yeah, I mentioned that prenup, but
Well, I feel dirty now.
I don't know what to tell you.
I thought this was going to... I went into this, and I changed our third story thinking, oh, this will be uplifting. Rory and his wife getting back together, and we've gotten... It's worse. The story's worse than I thought.
Yeah, well...
Because now it's all legal mumbo-jumbo.
The world isn't perfect.
No, it's not. You're good at identifying where it's not. Appreciate that.
Keep
us grounded.
I have a friend. Do you have a buddy or anybody in your circle that has a prenup?
I think I know somebody actually who did. Yeah.
I have a buddy that does, and when he was getting married, he was telling us about it. He was talking about how he talked to his wife, and we had to tell him, we're like, dude, do you realize that you don't have anything, right? He was in his mid-20s, like. I don't know if he was paycheck to paycheck, but he was probably like really close.
Sure, yeah.
And I knew his family background, and it wasn't from means.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, you're just causing yourself an awkward conversation.
He
You're
made
like,
her sign
yeah,
one?
he made her sign. It's like, you don't have anything, right?
It's when you bet on yourself. That guy's bet. You know what? I like it. He's betting on himself becoming a somebody.
But he's not, because assets you accrue in the marriage, it's a reason it's a prenuptial agreement. He's protecting like
what he has.
He's
before.
protecting like a Kleenex box.
I'm bringing this to the
pair
marriage
of socks
before our nuptials.
An old Mitsubishi Eclipse.
Would you sign a prenup?
Sure. I don't care.
Oh, interesting. Seems
Why
like
would
a
I
big
care?
mistake. Seems like a huge mistake.
Listen, my wife didn't have anything either, except a bunch of debt. Would have been great for me,
You should have
actually.
written it up, yeah. You should have written one up.
Oh,
That's
you want to keep the debt if it doesn't work out? Okay.
It's got to be a tough conversation. I haven't had that one with the old fiance yet. We'll see if she brings one to the table. I can see someone getting in her ear.
Okay.
A prenup.
A prenup?
Having her write one up for me to sign. Guess we're going to put this marriage off for a while.
Yeah, just sign it, dude. Whatever.
We'll see.
What? You don't have that now, and you're fine.
Right. I like that we don't have it.
No, never mind. I'm saying you don't have her, like, assets now.
Oh, and I'm okay.
And you're fine.
What if I'm marrying her for her assets?
Are you?
It's all a part of the equation.
Who's the cold-blooded one now? Is that
Rory's
a thing?
making me think about it. I wasn't even thinking about it until now. Now I'm thinking about it.
Well, I could find you.
Gotta make some phone calls.
I could find you a family attorney if you really need one. All right, stay tuned. We'll have more next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This Uinta Golf U.S. Open update is brought to you by Mountain Land Supply, Zions Bank, Black Desert Resort, Hoops Vision, and Siegfried and Jensen. And now, Real Golf Radio's Brian Taylor.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It is U.S. Open week here on the station, so we're going to talk to Brian coming up here momentarily. This segment is always brought to you by our friends at Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach Doors and Windows, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate. 801-566-1255, Peach Doors and Windows. Joining us now, he is the co-host every Saturday morning of Real Golf Radio, the one and only Brian Taylor. What's going on, BT?
Guys, it's good to be with you from Pinehurst. This is a pretty cool place. You guys been out here before by chance?
I haven't.
I used to live in North Carolina, as you know, but I have not been to Pinehurst. But I am wearing my Pinehurst shirt because my old man goes out there with his college buddies every year and plays. So I've heard many a story.
No, I love it.
Yeah. So I'm going to have my shirts all week.
I love that. They call it the cradle of American golf. You guys would love it. I mean, just a hangout place. They've got, when the championship's not here, they've got the 19th hole. They call it the Deuce because of the number 2 course, obviously. And it sits right there with the Adirondack chairs overlooking the 18th green. And it's just the whole thing is just very cool, relaxed vibe with all the pine trees hemming it all in. It's a great spot. haven't been back here since 2014 when the U.S. Open was here, but it just reminds me of how great of a spot it is. And I'm like, why don't I come back here more often? Just bring buddies, come back and play. There's golf courses. I think there's 100 golf courses in the area. So it's just a fun place to get out and play golf.
Very cool pairing with Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, and Rory McIlroy are going to be all teeing off together. I don't remember seeing a lot of super trios like that in my time.
Yeah, the USGA is kind of famous for their pairings, and that doesn't surprise me that they kind of put a super group together. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how I'm going to watch that. That's the challenge, with those three guys. It's almost like, can you recreate Tiger in the aggregate? And maybe you could with that particular group. That's one that might command as many people as you'd see in a Tiger group, for instance. So, I think it'd be hard right now to say if I was going to pick a winner, would I take that group or the field? DJ asked me earlier, would you take Scheffler or the field? That's always a tough one, but man, those three guys are the field. It might get you thinking a little bit. So it'll be fun to watch those guys go off.
What do you expect the neighborhood of the winning score to be this weekend?
I was just reading a little bit about that, Jake, and it's interesting because of the 12 rounds that they've played in the three previous U.S. Opens, the scoring average has been between about 72.5 to just under 76. And again, this is a par 70 golf course, so you're talking 2.5 to 6 over par. There hasn't really been one particular round that somebody went low, I should say the field went low at this golf course. So given that, I believe there were 486 players that have competed in this championship over those three U.S. Opens, and only 4 have finished under par at the end of the week. So given that, Martin Keimer back in 2014 just blew it all away and made everything boring because he won by 8 shots. He was 9 under par. Ricky Fowler and Eric Compton finished 1 under par to finish second. So it was one of those kind of runaway victories. And again, hats off to Keimer for his great play, but he's not the most exciting guy to watch. It's not like when Tiger blew the field away at Pebble Beach in 2000, and beat Ernie Els by 15 shots as the only player under par at 12 under. Tiger was an exciting guy to watch even when he was way out in front. So I'm sort of hoping it doesn't do something like that, but I think it's going to be 5 under or less. Given the kind of the way this whole thing has gone, I would probably put the over under at maybe at 4.5 and take the under.
How big of a story or how big of an impact will it have Jon Rahm withdrawing due to the foot infection?
A year ago, I would have said that was a huge story. To be honest with you, this week, it's not that big of a story. And that's the bigger story, is that it's not a big story. Jon Rahm he came out at Augusta when he was the defending champion at the Masters. He talked about how he was, sort of disappointed and frustrated that people weren't treating him the same. And then he showed up at the PGA Championship and said, hey, I'm still a member of the PGA Tour. I just am suspended, but I want the best for the PGA Tour. And he's clearly got a little FOMO going on. And then he said at his press conference before withdrawing here this week at Pinehurst, and he was just asked about all the Scotty Scheffler questions. And he was even asked specifically, hey, it was sort of you and Scotty before you left for LIV. Now it's all Scotty. And you could just tell, like, he does not like that he is kind of out of the show. And that's unfortunate. It really is for all of golf, for the fans, everybody, that the show doesn't, sort of stick together on a regular basis. So I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on this particular event, but I do think it's continuing to have an impact on one of the great players of our generation that's sort of not really around to compete. He's had a terrible major year. I think he finished 45th, missed the cut at the PGA, and now had to withdraw with the toe injury. So tough year so far for Jon Rahm.
You mentioned Scheffler, and obviously he's on a hot streak. Really has taken it to the next level. But as you allude to, it's not like he stormed onto the scene yesterday. Like, he's been good for a while. So I'm curious, what part of his game has meant the extra gear? What has he honed that and is doing now that maybe he wasn't before?
Yeah, 100%, Jake. It's his putter. He was putting on Tiger-like ball striking performances for almost an entire season before he finally got the putter to line up with the rest of his game. And since that time, it's kind of been Katie bar the door. He's literally such a driver of the golf ball, such a good ball striker. His short game is good. I mean, I was looking at he leads the PGA Tour in nearly every major statistical category, and I was trying to come up with one that you could point to this week that said, hey, would this be a difference maker? And I was starting to think strokes gained approach the green. There's a lot of ways to hit the fairway here at Pinehurst. You could hit a driver, you could hit iron, but you really, your tee shot is being hit with your second shot in mind. And sometimes your second shot is being hit with where to place the third shot, even on a par 4, and then you've got to be able to get up and down. The effective areas of these greens in which you can hit the ball and stop the ball and still leave yourself a chance to make a putt is so small that I don't know that it's necessarily a putting contest, even though the question you asked me was about Scotty and his putting. That's important. But I think there's not going to be a lot of long putts made just because I don't think you're going to be able to hold the green, and have a long putt. I think it's either going to be on the green and you're going to have a good look at it, or it's going to roll off the green and you're going to be chipping it or putting it from off the surface. And so I like the strokes gained approach the green, guys that are able to get it in proximity, and Scotty Scheffler leads that, almost doubles up the next guy in contention there, which you'd think of as Xander Schauffele. I mean, they're number 1 and number 4, and Scotty's almost twice as good in that category. So, it's his for sure has been his putter, and the rest of his game is just so sharp right now. And then the other thing has just been, his caddy. Ted Scott, I think, is a very underrated part of that team that just seems to, for whatever reason, settle him to allow him to play his best golf, because until he made that switch in caddy, the caddy and the putter have been the two big switches that have turned things on for him.
All right, last thing from me, BT, and I hope this question will eventually make sense. But did you see yesterday that Joey Chestnut has pulled out of the hot dog eating contest? Did you see that news?
I did.
Do you realize it's because they won't let him compete because he endorses a rival brand of hot dog?
A vegan brand.
A vegan brand of hot dog. BT, you're aware of this story?
Yes, I read that. I was surprised.
So it's another one of those situations where the athlete, if you can call him that, thinks he's the show, and the event says, nah, bro, we're the show. And he's going to go off and fall into obscurity because he's not going to compete in this thing, and nobody's not going to make any headlines anymore. And he's eventually, in my opinion, going to lose his vegan hot dog sponsorship and his any claim to notoriety. So it's directly comparable, in my opinion, to the PGA Live thing. And now that we're in a couple years into this, where those golfers went, they said, no, we're the show, we're the brand, we're going to take the dough, and we're going to remain us, just on a different tour. And the PGA Tour said, no, we're the show. We've always been the show. And it's this great argument, right? So now that we're a couple years into this, what has been the result? Are the Live guys falling off the planet, as I predicted? Are they just happy? Well, I mean, give me your assessment of where we are with that situation.
It's interesting because I'm sitting there listening to that. By the way, that was beautifully said, Jake. That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
That was sweet. But I kept thinking, but Joey Chestnut kind of, I don't know that I would have even known about the hot dog contest were it not for Joey Chestnut.
Who was the dude
continuing
before
to throw
him,
down.
though? Kobayashi.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're right. There was Kobe. But I was like, is this a Caitlin Clark WNBA conversation, or is this a Live PGA Tour? I wasn't sure exactly where you were going with that. But, so it's a good question. And that was excellent. But I'm sorry I even derailed it with the commentary there.
Oh, you're all good.
I think – so we just passed the June 6th framework agreement that happened a year ago. It's now been just over a year since we saw – Commissioner Monahan and Al Ruman and whatever go on to the CNBC or MSNBC or whatever it was and announce this framework agreement, right? So it was going to be done in 6 months, then it was end of the year, and then they extended it, and now here we are a year later with not much happening. I do think that the bigger – that there's two losers in this thing. One, of the golf fans are the losers, right, ultimately. Two, I think the players that went over there that were legitimately in there, like we've mentioned John Rahm, Cameron Smith, Bryson DeChambeau, those come to mind. I think those players really have missed a window where they could continue to grow their brand here on the PGA Tour. I was just talking with another media member, and he wanted it to be off the record, but he said he's been to 6 Live events, and so I was asking his mom, I've not been to one, and he said I would liken it I would liken the enthusiasm and excitement around that event in person to the member guest at my club. So that's, this is a respected national writer. And so for him to say that kind of confirms what my suspicion is and what I've kind of seen as I've watched on TV. There's just not a lot going on out there. There's not there's not that. I don't think that's getting the juices going for these guys. And I think they expected that they would have this leverage and shut this whole thing down and get all their demands met and be back on tour with a bunch of money in their pocket. And it's not necessarily going as quickly as they had hoped for. So, yeah, those players that were in their prime, I do think there's maybe some buyer's remorse there. For the rest of the guys that just got a big check that were kind of at the end of their career, I'm looking at the Lee Westwoods and the Ian Poulters and those guys. Yeah, why wouldn't you do that deal? I mean, if someone's going to pay you that much money, you got to take it. But for the guys that are trying to be serious about, comparing themselves to the greatest players and playing the biggest stages, they're not doing that right now. And so I do think they ultimately lose in this unless your only measurement is your pocketbook, and then clearly they got paid.
Thank you, BT. Look forward to all your great coverage throughout the week.
You got it, boys. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you, buddy. Sorry we went a little long there, but I did want to get to live, because that remains just a crazy, bizarre story.
It's just not a thing. It's just not a story. Nobody pays attention. I've never heard any results from any of the tournaments. Nobody watches it. You got your money. You cashed out. The goal of the Live Tour was not to put eyeballs on golf. It was to do something far less above ground, and they've done it.
And the only reaction the PGA Tour has taken is that they allowed themselves to actually take the Saudi money too.
Yeah.
Which is what that agreement last year was all about, which is crazy. Everybody thought, it's going to be a merger. And it's like, no, they're just going to take Saudi Arabia's money.
Yep.
Oh, man. All right. Well, let's do a You Win a Golf giveaway right now. It's the You Win a Golf major, of course, contest. We do it every major. Caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. We're going to assign you a golfer. If that golfer wins the U.S. Open this weekend, you get a new driver, the same brand as the winner of the U.S. Open, courtesy of our friends at You Win a Golf. Stay tuned. More next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.